you get your keys. As of filming this video in September 2020, there's a stamp duty freeze holiday.
Hey guys, welcome back to our channel. I'm Mel.
I'm Sean.
And we are the
Dyers
Fam. So today we've got a really in-depth technical video for you guys. If you're just about to buy a house or you're thinking about buying a property, you have to know what the legal steps are, what the conveyancing process is. So we're going to break that down for you today. We're going to also tell you our conveyancing process and how much we paid for it all as well. And we just did it. So in August 2020, we bought our first property, and after about 6 months of going through the process, we're finally here. But at the beginning, we literally had no idea. No one really explained it to us. So we wanted to be able to share that with you guys, tell you what all the steps were so that you're fully prepared for when you go through that yourself. So if you like this video, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and make sure you hit that bell button so you get the first notifications of when we drop videos. We've also got loads of videos on our own home renovation process, so you can follow that too.
So I have a law degree, and I thought that this process would actually be very simple. It turned out it is not. And most people coming into this process completely blind, it can be quite difficult, and it can be very, very, very hard to be able to understand not only the legal terminology, but also what the process is. So we're in a unique position because we bought from my family. So we have a very unique insight into what the seller's point of view is with regard to the conveyancing process, but also our buying side to the process. My dad is classified as the seller, and we are classified as the buyer. So throughout this video, we'll be talking through the two perspectives from the seller and the buyers. So at this point in your journey, you might have already made an offer on a property. You might have done some surveys on a property. You might be currently talking to a bank/mortgage broker about getting your mortgage, or you might even have your mortgage in principle. And that's all great. So that takes us to step one in this process, instructing a solicitor. The buyer and the seller will have to appoint solicitors. Now, from our perspective, we are the buyers. So when we went to appoint a solicitor, we spoke to some friends, we spoke to our family who have bought properties and the solicitors that they use. And we found Lawcom through Stepladder. Stepladder is a company that I did some work with in the past, and I still have a really close connection with now. They are a peer-to-peer lending platform that helps people save up for their deposit quicker and therefore buy their house quicker. Now, we didn't need help with our deposit, but they recommended Lawcom because that's the firm that they use for all the people that buy their houses through their circles.
It was really useful actually just to use them as obviously we had a different kind of relationship with them, so we were able to get their support through their network of contacts and lawyers, but it was really useful to have that available to us. And obviously, had we met them, I don't know, 5 years ago, we probably would have used them to help us save for a deposit much earlier.
So after we appointed our solicitor, for them to actually begin the process, we needed to give them a retainer fee of £300. That then enabled us to begin the process and for them to write to the buyer's solicitors, i.e. my dad and my aunt, for them to answer some questions. Now that takes us to step number 2. My dad and my aunt had to complete a couple of documents that effectively outlined what was in the property, how many radiators there were, what the cooker was, the windows, the curtain railings, what work had been done on the property. So if you remember from our previous videos, we had an extension done in the 80s, so my dad had to give the details about all of that. That is important because that information was going to come to us and we would have to review those documents, because anything that didn't make any sense or anything that was untoward, we would be able to raise that with our solicitor and to check with the sellers to make sure everything was intact.
So the next step for us was, once the itinerary forms had been completed by the seller, we then received them, obviously via our solicitors, and we were able to look at them, look at what the information was there, and also the solicitors started doing some checks on our behalf. So obviously, if we were buying from a third party or an unknown person, there'd be all these questions where we'd be really worried about the state of the property, you know, whether there's any kind of issues with flooding in the area or subsidence or maybe damp in the property. So the solicitors start to inquire and ask all these questions. So they asked for things like an EPC certificate from the seller to prove the energy efficiency of the house. They asked for any restrictive covenants, so such as like having a shared driveway or anything shared between your property and any of the neighbours' properties. And so they did those checks on our behalf. And so while they were doing that, we were obviously sorting out our mortgage with our mortgage broker. And so it was a bit of a tricky time for us because of COVID and there were some delays. Our property had to undergo a physical valuation by the bank. So the banks usually do either a desktop, whether it's like an online valuation of a property, or they'll actually want to come on site and view it to value it. And so in our case, we got a bit unlucky. They said we wanted to come and see the property. And so we had to wait. And because of COVID, obviously they weren't having anyone going out and doing valuations during lockdown. So we had to wait about a month, and that kind of delayed things, which was super annoying. But in the end, the valuer came around and gave the same value of the property as we had estimated. So that was really good. The bank then sent us like a mortgage confirmation form. And so this is the point where we dealt a lot more with the solicitors than we did with the mortgage broker, because the solicitor basically contacted the bank and liaised with the bank on our behalf. And so they had a mortgage confirmation form which we had to fill out. The important stuff like we are who we say we are, we had to have witnesses sign it to prove, you know, who we are and all that sort of thing. And so the bank had that assurance. And when that was complete and we finally had our mortgage offer like rubber stamped, then our solicitors could start doing what they call the searches. Searches are basically carried out by a third-party company, and they check for things like subsidence or flooding in the area or radiation in the area, and they check all the kind of environmental type of stuff, right? But the thing about the searches is that we can't actually do them until we know who's providing us with the mortgage, because every bank has different search providers that they're happy for us to use. So that was a bit of a hiccup in the process, and we had to be a bit delayed. And so when we finally got our mortgage offer confirmed and the valuation done, then the searches could happen. And I think the searches took about a month, so the solicitors did them and they took about a month.
What was really interesting about what came back in the searches is that on our road, where the house is, we are very close to a conservation area. And if we had fallen into the conservation area, it would have restricted the type of renovation that we would be able to do on the property. Now, I've lived there all my life and I had no idea that we were even close to a conservation zone. So that is something that when you're buying a property, try and figure out even before the solicitors begin their searches, because if you're planning on buying a property to renovate it or to do whatever you want with it, it's better to find out whether it's in the zone before you begin this process, because if you find out during this process, it might then change what you want to do with the property.
You can actually find out if it's in a conservation zone if you go onto the council's website, and they usually have like a map and they kind of mark it out in different shades of green of what's in a conservation zone and what isn't. And there are quite a lot of restrictions, so there are things that you can't do to the front of the house because it might significantly alter the way it looks, and basically in a conservation zone they want to keep the kind of look and feel of the area. And so even things like having a loft extension, you can't increase the height of the loft area, you have to keep it to like a pitched roof. So there's lots of things to consider if you are buying a house in a conservation area. So once the solicitors had completed all of our checks, they then obviously had loads and loads of questions about the property. Obviously they were acting on our behalf because they're doing their due diligence, and me and Sean were kind of like, oh, but we're just buying for family, like we don't really care, like we just want to get the process done. But they obviously explained to us that it's part of their due diligence as our lawyers to make sure that they ask all these questions. And so they had a ton of things that they went back to their sellers' solicitors and they asked all these questions. And so once they finally had answers to all those questions, then they were actually allowed to start the process of the contracts and preparing contracts. So at this point in the process, we are all getting ready for exchange of contracts. So you would pay your deposit to your solicitor, and then the solicitor would hold it, speak to the seller's solicitor and agree a date for exchange and also completion.
When the contracts are signed and they are returned on the exchange day, that is when you have exchanged, that is when you're legally committed. It's the point of no return. At this point, the solicitors will also give you a completion date. Now, the completion day normally is about 7 days after exchange. And when you get to that day, a couple of things happen. First of all, your solicitor will instruct the bank to release the funds, the mortgage, which will be going to the seller. You get your keys. And there are a couple of things that the solicitors will still need to do. So the solicitor will tell the land registry that there is now a change of ownership, and that will be put into your names, and the solicitor will then send you a copy of the deed to you. The deed is the document that affirms that you own that property. Normally, you would also have to pay stamp duty at this point, but we're in very unusual circumstances, and as of filming this video in September 2020, there is a stamp duty holiday, and that will continue all the way up to March 2021.
You can tell that we also benefited from the stamp duty holiday. Oh my god, guys, we saved £10,000. Like,
will you stop? £15,000.
Oh, was it?
Yeah.
It's a good thing we didn't have to pay it then, isn't it?
There isn't really anything more for you to do at this point, apart from open a bottle of champagne and celebrate the fact that you have a new house. The only thing that you do need to do, which your solicitors will not do, is to inform the council, your local council, that you are now in possession and ownership of your new property, and also speak to your gas and electric companies to change your suppliers to your name.
Okay, so we're now going to break it down for you and tell you exactly what we paid for all these different things with the company that we use. So up on screen here, you're going to see our total bill, and we actually paid a total of £1,621.44. So up here we've got things like obviously the lawyer's fees, we've got different fees for transferring stuff, so transferring documents. We did a lot of it over the COVID periods. So the lawyers had a lot of documents signed like electronically, but there were some things that they had to send by paper, so obviously they had to charge for those things. They had to check our ID, and I think they check against some kind of like credit check type of company. And obviously there was a fee for registering us with the land registry to change the ownership, and also some of those small things like the searches and the bankruptcy check and all that sort of thing. A total of £1,622 is quite a lot. We didn't have to pay most of it basically until the end of the process, so just before we completed we actually paid the final fee. So we thought that this was a pretty reasonable price. You know, we dealt with them remotely like all the way through. We were able to do everything either via email or by the phone, and that was really helpful for us, not only because of COVID but also because we are just generally quite busy in the week because of work, and so we can't really have much time to do other stuff and go and meet solicitors and stuff. So
it was really funny, because when we were talking to the family and the fact we told them that, you know, we had completed and we never really saw our solicitor, one auntie asked me, "Oh, what does our solicitor look like? How is he or she?" And I was like, I have no idea. We've never seen them. But I think that's a testament to the firm, actually, given the fact that, you know, we were in a lockdown during our process and we still managed to get everything that we needed to get done, and without needing to be there face to face or anything like that. As I say, I think it was a testament to how they ran their operation.
thank you, Trish.
So, Mel, this whole process...
Mr. Dias. Who's Mel?
Mrs. Dias, I'm sorry. What did you think of it?
I literally didn't understand a single thing. I mean, you basically did this whole side of the stuff. I didn't get it. I mean, it seems very complicated. I think like the whole process is just very complicated. It needs a massive reform. You know, even things like sending forms to the land registry. The land registry doesn't have online kind of form filling, so we had to literally post things to the land registry. So that was just a bit ridiculous. But one of our unique things was that obviously we were buying from family, and one of the family members is abroad, and so we had to have like a bit of a different setup, and we had to send documents all the way over to Sri Lanka. So in the majority of cases we were able to send documents electronically, and so that really helped speed up things. What would you say are the top kind of recommendations that we learned from our time?
So I think picking a firm that you know will do a good job is really important. When we picked Lawcom, they did everything they needed to do and more, and they kept our minds at ease. And I know of scenarios and situations where firms don't necessarily do what they need to do or inform their clients.
So guys, if you've already been through this process, please drop us some comments below, or if you're just about to, please feel free to drop us a question below and we'll be sure to answer it as best as we can. And so hope you enjoyed this video and you found it informative, and we'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye.